Welcome back, everybody, to Partnerships for Smarter Security, made possible by Dell Technologies. And on previous episodes, we focused a lot on recovery. In this episode, we're going to talk about reducing the attack surface with a much deeper focus on supply chain security, a really important topic today within enterprises. And all this coincides, of course, with Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Now, in this series, we're exploring how industry participants across the stack are collaborating to improve security outcomes for enterprises and organizations globally. And with me today are two experts in their respective fields. JR Balaji, who's the Director of Product Management for Software in the Client Solutions Group at Dell Technologies, and Patrick Bohart, who's the Director of Trust and Security Products in the Software and Technology Group at Intel. Gents, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
All right, let's start by setting a baseline. I mean, years ago, we shifted from what we think of, from where we sit today as a relatively benign attacks. I mean some kid in his basement infecting our devices for fun and bragging rights, but organized criminals and nation states have realized that cyber attacks, they scale when you can infiltrate an organization's crown jewels and extract ransoms and exfiltrate trade secrets and cause other damage. Earlier this decade, we heard about supply chain attacks. Let's start with, why are these attacks so effective? And JR, why are the attackers targeting the supply chain?
Thanks. First of all, it's great to be talking to both of you here. Attackers have a wide variety of techniques that they can leverage. I always refer to everybody to the MITRE ATT&CK technique. There are constantly techniques being added to that. Now, most organizations tend to focus on popular techniques, phishing, ransomware, credential theft. They are very popular and therefore top of mind for most IT and security organizations. But the reality is that adversaries can use any combination of techniques to breach organizations. Therefore, they look for softer targets. And supply chain, for example, is a relatively less evolved, less understood security threat vector. Therefore, they go after supply chain and other less understood, less protected targets.
Yeah, so Patrick, chains have links. And so people are attacking the weakest link. What's your perspective on this?
We have 20 years of partnering with companies like Dell, CrowdStrike, Microsoft, with a focus on OS and application security and hardening those surfaces, for the last 20 years. We've done such a good job there that the attackers have had to go elsewhere. You see this in the increase in firmware and BIOS level attacks, and they're absolutely moving to the supply chain as the next frontier of areas where they can insert malicious code and get their exploits out into the wild.
Well, so that said, it's like every year, there's new attack vectors in novel ways. The adversary is exceedingly capable. Patrick, let's stay with you. How do you assess how well prepared organizations are to defend against these types of novel attacks? How exposed are we?
Well, like Dell and Intel have been partnered for years on this one, but if you look at the industry data, supply chain attacks are on the rise, and they're going up hundreds of percentage points a year. So that suggests that the level of industry awareness and the level of industry solution that we need, we haven't hit that yet. That said, we're going to talk about what Dell and Intel are doing here, and we're really leaders in this space to protect Dell devices running on Intel vPro processors.
And JR, I mean, it's like the way we think about attacks are changing. We used to be focused on dwell time, and now it's, how much time does it take for somebody to start traversing laterally? So what's your take on how well prepared organizations are?
Goes back to what I said a little earlier, right? So organizations have focused a lot of their preparation over years on top attack vectors. In recent times, ransomware has been top of mind for every organization, every size of organization. So they're just now coming up to, until SolarWinds happened, people did not realize just how large of a threat vector supply chain itself is. So I would say they're definitely underprepared. In fact, we did a study within Dell. We interviewed a whole bunch of global IT decision makers, and we found that only 40% of the organizations actually demand from their IT suppliers details around how they've implemented supply chain security, and that's a gap. And beyond that, it's also complex because you have to think about multiple types of controls within supply chain. We will talk a little bit more in detail later, but we did talk about, we talk about a little bit of that paradigm of physical and digital security, right? And they have to account for all of that into the picture. They have to think about sourcing, assembly, manufacturing, and how the device is procured. So the complexity increases quite a bit with supply chain. We also know that from other studies that about 69% of the organizations have had at least one device level or device-based attack used against them. And those are all, pointing to the fact that the level of preparedness is not where it should be.
It's a very complicated situation for organizations. And JR, let's stay with you. And we have a graphic here that I want to pull up, and maybe you could talk to that. But I want to understand what you're doing about it. How does the Dell and Intel's, how does your collaboration create an environment that's safer? We care about more trusted client and PC security supply chains for enterprises around the world. How are you approaching that?
Sure. By now, it should be amply clear that security is a team sport. It takes the coming together of security community to jointly address this, what I call pandemic of its own right, that most organizations are facing as they digitalize and modernize. The cyber risk thus just exponentially increases. That said, the way we think about it is, both Dell and Intel have a long history of serving customers in the IT space. We understand IT, we understand security. We understand the points of intersection between these two organizations and how they need to come together at the seams to solve these problems. Therefore, our approach to all of this is we really want to operate at, so look at the entire attack surface. You can prevent all you can try to prevent as much as you can in cyber, but we have to come together and say, hey, all the possible attack surfaces that could exist, and how do we continuously shrink that attack surface through joint innovation? And obviously, we specialize in our own things. There are things that Intel can do at the silicon level and what they control within the chipset. Dell can do a lot of things around procurement, vendor selection, assembly, manufacturing, shipping. So by bringing the expertise of what each of us do well together, we collectively rise the profile of security of a device, and we are in a position to reduce more attack surface than what we would do if we just acted individually. That's why this partnership matters a lot.
Thank you, JR, especially for those stats. Patrick, the thing we always talk about in security, and it's become sort of a throwaway line, is security must be designed in. And everybody says that, we all nod our heads, but then you think about, okay, what does that mean and how hard is it to do that? I write a lot, and I'm always writing about the stack, the infrastructure stack, the data stack, the application stack, the networking stack, the cloud stack, and there's seams everywhere. So let's start with, again, designing it in. From your perspective, how do you think about this collaboration and creating a more trusted client and PC supply chain?
Yeah. So I want to go back to something that JR said. He mentioned physical and digital, and I wrote a paper on this 2 years ago. Dell Safe Supply, industry leading physical supply chain security program, personnel, facilities, whitelist vendors, tamper evident tape on the boxes and tamper evident, moving services when they move the product from point A to point B. Physical supply chain security is what typically gets talked about, but where I think Dell and Intel have really collaborated and been innovative is around this idea of digital supply chain security. And whether we're gathering information and digital information as the products are being manufactured, so we're understanding the state of the product as it's being manufactured, understanding the details of the machines and the technology and the tools that were being used, capturing that information in a digital, kind of a digital DNA of the device. And then when we get into, the hardware aspect of this, Dell and Intel have partnered around very unique use of Intel vPro technology, technologies like our vPro manageability engine to ensure that the device is trusted at point A, and then verifying through this, this digital supply chain that it, arrives in the same digital state. And then going down into resilience, Dell Safe BIOS, leveraging Intel vPro Hardware Shield capabilities like Boot Guard and BIOS Guard, which can ensure that, again, those regions, those sensitive regions of the CPU, those sensitive regions of the platform haven't been tampered with and haven't been attacked as the device moved through the supply chain. And that's really that digital supply chain security is, I think, really where Dell and Intel have created some unique value.
Right, I mean, this is a really hard problem, and it takes companies with resources like you have to lead. So JR, let's come back to you. I always like to talk about first principles, and we have another graphic here, but I'm interested in how Dell and Intel approach the PC supply chain. What's the starting point, and your general philosophy, if you could talk about that, to lowering supply chain security risk?
Yeah, I always tell everybody that security of a device begins even before it's assembled. So we shift left, extreme left, from the point of view of even designing, identifying, procuring components from vendors. How do we ensure, especially we saw this during pandemic, there was a scramble for parts. And as those things happen, some of those supply chain controls tend to get compromised. And Dell, because of the prowess we have in supply chain, was able to bring to bear and make sure that we are maintaining our supply chain rigor to the utmost standards, what we call secure design life cycle. So we stuck to those principles. So if I think about that, the first thing is that we have to secure our device supply chain. That means we have to put the strictest of the controls on our supply chain, hardware, software. Our fulfillment centers have to have a certain quality of security. We even define, and this is referenced in detail in the white paper, what kind of perimeter security we expect our supply, our fulfillment centers to have. What kind of tracking we do on shipments, especially as they go through riskier routes, sea shipment particularly. We think about how do we implement privilege access within factories. Who can do what, right? We do signing of firmware and BIOS, and those are done it in specific locations. The people who can sign, the infrastructure set up to sign, all that is designed to meet the highest of the standards. Then we get into what we call as the design and develop secure devices. Obviously, our products would have to have that inbuilt, which is where a lot of our secure design lifecycle comes into picture. We perform rigorous testing, and one of the things we do is what we call threat modeling and adversary behavior, operating with an adversary behavior mindset, right? What are the kind of things that adversaries are likely to exploit? We do that simulations, and then we do rigorous, testing and threat modeling. And based on the risk that is identified, we obviously build in the protections or countermeasures as needed. We even have an expanded bug bounty program, pen testing, everything we have amplified over the last several years so that we can find things that are broken way before an adversary can find it. Then we work on making sure that we are also able to get these devices into the hands of our customers in the most secure way. There we do a couple of things, even being prescriptive about what kind of locks that our trucks can use. There are 4 different specified kind of locks that they can use, nothing else. Similarly for secure component verification, and this is coming up to be, right now it's a requirement in the federal space. It'll likely be a regulation coming up pretty soon, where most federal organizations are required to demand for their IT suppliers a platform certificate that can attest to the validity and integrity of the components put on the device. We have had that for the last couple of years because we knew this is important for our customers, and we got ahead of it and built it. Again, speak to the mindset of it's not about an attack vector that emerges and becomes a big deal. Then we figure out how to solve it. Our mindset and approach and design philosophy is find an attack surface before it blows up and shrink it so that it's that much harder for adversaries to breach our customers.
Thank you, JR. Now, Patrick, coming back to you in this notion of first principles, I'm looking at this slide, security, integrity, quality, resilience. There's so many pieces of this. You got the development lifecycle, you got supplier accountability, you've got counterfeit prevention and detection. That's very complicated. And then of course, kind of Intel's wheelhouse, silicon root of trust, platform firmware resiliency, but you guys, you write a lot of software, you have a really robust supply chain. So Patrick, what's your point of view on this?
Well, yeah, I want to build on a couple of things that JR said. He mentioned platform certificates, and platform certificates are becoming an industry standard way of having that digital supply chain security where we're tracking the device as it goes through its manufacturing process. So that specification was authored by the Trusted Computing Group, and Intel and Dell are both board members of TCG, and we're very active in documenting and creating that specification. And that's become a very important piece for how government organizations and even financial services organizations are ensuring that they understand what they're getting, and they're ensuring that as we've gone through all those pieces, we have that digital DNA, that digital trail, so that we can understand where it came from, who participated. Is it still in the trusted state that I expected in? And we're going to talk a little bit later about where we see the industry going. And again, this is, Dell and Intel are at the forefront of authoring that next generation of standards for how you move the trust barrier from the system level all the way down to can I verify the trust of each individual components digitally? So that's been a big collaboration point for us.
Yeah, thank you. And as I was saying before, the stack keeps getting more complicated. Let's talk about the topic du jour. JR, everyone's of course focused on AI and how it's going to revolutionize security. But at the same time, AI brings in risk. I know procurement departments like, wait a minute, you've got AI. Well, how do we, make sure that complies and that's safe? So how is Dell using AI in its supply chain? And then Patrick, I'll come back to you. JR, take it away.
I would say that we all know the potential of AI and also the risk of AI. That basically means that organizations will have to, just as we would expect an adversary to lay their hands on AI technology and use it to do bad things, organizations have to use AI to defend AI that can do bad. From our side, we do a lot of things, right? So historically, we have been leveraging things like machine learning and AI in our supply chain for many years. Again, it's quite widely documented in our white paper, so I definitely encourage our viewers to go read about it. But it starts with intelligent planning and forecasting models, because there's the whole aspect of supply chain resiliency and de-risking that we'll have to account for all the time. It's not necessarily just security, but it's also overall supply risk that we have to account for. We have forecasting drivers for inventory optimization engine that helps us improve our forecast accuracy. We are also scaling our digital twin capabilities that allows us to help conduct a lot of what-if scenarios and business outcomes and assess risk so that we are better prepared to deal with any kind of supply chain disruption, whether it is security related or something else. Now we should be in a position to be resilient against those. We're also developing machine learning models that can optimize inventory, minimize shortages, all of that. So all of the good stuff. And then last but not the least, we also have a lot of management and insights and logistics that uses AI. Again, a lot of that is part and parcel of how Dell has operated over many, many years. Okay,
and then Patrick, I'm interested in Intel's point of view on this topic. You hear all the buzz around neural processing units. What do you think about this AI topic?
Well, obviously it's going to be critical for the next, stage of security moving forward. We're in the process right now of defining how we can use LMM for platform component identification. That's going to be a powerful tool. You mentioned counterfeit identification. That's a big risk. It's a massive security risk. It's one that we don't have the controls we need today, and AI is going to play a big role in helping to identify counterfeit components going into our systems. But then we also talked about resilience, and an area where Intel and Dell have partnered, where we're using that XPU, NPU, GPU strategy, is in the work that we're doing collaboratively with CrowdStrike on threat detection. because it's not only about protecting the device as it goes through the manufacturing environment. You have to then maintain and protect the device as it goes into its operational phase. And the work we've done around Intel threat detection, where we can detect abnormal behavior on the CPU. And today, anything that's abnormal is malicious. If there's something happening on the device that exceeds or goes beyond what we understand the normal baseline is, that's a malicious activity. And the sooner we can get that information through technology like threat detection technology, Intel threat detection technology to CrowdStrike and then to the end customer, the better. And this is a vibrant partnership that Intel, CrowdStrike, and Dell have had around Intel vPro and Intel threat detection technology.
And I think this industry collaboration is so important. It's something that we talk about all the time on the CUBE. Organizations like yours with resources and talent and capabilities and experience have to work together because the adversaries are so capable. Patrick, staying with you, can we talk a little bit about futures? How do you see, you've got to keep evolving because again, the attackers are evolving, they're a moving target. How do you see these capabilities evolving in the future?
Well, we talked about AI, and that's obviously going to be a big, AI is going to play a big role moving forward. The other area where we're going to evolve supply chain security is how Dell and Intel are going to partner in the Trusted Computing Group to generate the next set of standards for how you trust the device and how you trust the components going into those devices. And we're partnered together to create standards like DICE, which is a hardware-based identity that we're going to have the industry build into their components. So we're no longer trusting a device based on its product number and serial number. There's actually going to be a cryptographic way to attest to the identity of individual devices going into Dell systems. And then Dell, as the owner of the system, as the manufacturer of the system, can create that root of trust where they can use these next generation standards to actually query the devices and say, is this the same hard drive? And do I trust this hard drive? Is it the same one that I put on the system when it was manufactured? And do I trust it? Is it an authentic manufactured hard drive? And can it still identify itself as being the supply chain component that I trusted when I put it on there? And that's going to be a huge step forward because we're no longer looking at the system level. We're taking that barrier of trust and bringing it all the way down to the individual component levels.
Yeah, DICE is, if I understand it, a hardware and software sort of cryptographic mechanism. I forget what it stands for, device something, but it's a security.
Identity component engine, but yeah.
Thank you for that. What is it? It's device identity component engine. Okay, thank you for that.
And it is, and I mean, in this way, we can, ensure, Dell and Intel can ensure that the components going into the system at manufacturer are from trusted sources, not counterfeit, not mislabeled, not gray market, but are the white list components that we expect, and then have over the life cycle of that device the ability to ensure that those devices remain the same and untampered. And if there is another SolarWinds attack, and if an adversary comes in and begins altering hard drives or altering the communications infrastructure of the device, that device will no longer be able to appropriately identify itself, and that will cue IT, this device has been tampered, this device is at risk.
Thank you. JR, maybe a 2-for-1 here. I mean, your ability to see around corners and sort of forecast the future is important. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on sort of that last topic, but also what makes Dell and Intel's approach stand out? How is it different, JR?
So I want to quickly chime in on where Patrick left off before I answer that question.
Please.
He talked about regulation. That's so important. Again, all of this goes back to the well-understood zero trust principles. Today, most software security companies will look at zero trust and how they build their products. There is a tremendous opportunity for companies like Dell and Intel to collaborate, and industry in general to collaborate and ensure that the zero trust standards are understood and accepted and built into the device level, right? That's new territory we are charting, right? So that's very important for us to continue to further our mission on that. Now, back to your question about how do we stand out? I said this a little bit earlier. It's two things. One is focused on outcomes-based approach. Security industry is replete with many different tools and widgets, no dearth of them. But cyber breaches continue to happen, and they happen because too many tools, too many silos, and organizations, especially IT and security, struggle to keep up with all of these. And there is definitely an opportunity for us to try to, because we understand IT and security better, we can start operating with that, like I said, the adversary mindset, and start to continuously shrink attack surface. So it's a two-pronged approach at the end of it. One is continuously build countermeasures and reduce attack surfaces so that the exposure area is shrunk further and further. And when things happen, bad things happen, detect and respond much faster. And how do we do that? It's about making sure that that rich telemetry that we collect out of all the discussion just we had today, all of that is very rich telemetry that Security Operations Center could use to have an ability to have an early detection of a threat. Now, this is where partnerships also matter. Beyond what Intel and Dell does, the integration and partnerships we have with vendors like CrowdStrike or Microsoft, these will allow us to surface these telemetry in the tools that IT and security are used to, so that they have better context, richer telemetry, and hopefully ability to take faster action.
I mean, those three, brands, obviously it's not just a, press release that you guys are doing. You're actually doing some of the hard work. But Patrick, I wonder if there's anything you would add to that differentiation point.
No, I mean, Dell is a leader in taking advantage of hardware-based security. Dell is a leader in leveraging the capabilities in the Intel vPro platform to provide, unique value. And again, like you said, reduce those attack surfaces and offer improved abilities around resilience. And that's what stands out is really taking advantage of that hardware-based security. It's like I said, the industry has been attacking software for decades, and the degree to which we can, root those solutions in vPro security, the better off Intel and Dell are going to be, the better off ultimately the end customers are going to be.
All right, last question. Guys, any parting advice that you would impart to our audience? What questions should organizations be asking vendors like you and others, maybe so that they can help understand the risk and reduce it? JR, why don't we start, and then Patrick, you bring us home.
Yeah, I think organizations have to place greater emphasis on foundational hardware level security in general. As we started at the very beginning of this discussion, that's a relatively less focused, less understood area, however, a big point of exposure for organizations. So therefore, my suggestion to organization is to ask vendors about their product development practices. What kind of governance do they have? Do they have the ability to provide platform certificates for products? What kind of sourcing, manufacturing, and supply chain risks mitigation that they have in place? And also, last but not the least, how do they ensure they're continuously mitigating attack surface, reducing attack surface, and using things like threat modeling? Those are the things that I think customers should ask any IT supplier at this point.
Great, and Patrick, we'll give you the last word.
In my discussions with enterprise IT, I'm often shocked at the level of awareness of the innovation that's happening, the innovations that are actually available today, hardware that companies have deployed in thousands of systems that they're not taking advantage of just purely because they didn't know. And both Dell and Intel have robust sales forces with deep knowledge to perform the role of trusted advisor to these IT organizations. So talk to them, ask them across the supply chain and into the life cycle of the device, where are those opportunities and what are those solutions that are available today, for Dell-based systems that are built on Intel vPro processors? Where are those solutions like threat detection technology that, again, is proved incredibly valuable for identifying threats? And I think, or for even going back into the supply chain, the value in the what we can offer in terms of security around platform certificates even, that's one of the older sets of technology we talked about today, and still awareness is low. So, talk to your Dell advisor, talk to your Intel advisor. There are solutions out there across the spectrum, from supply chain to operational security, that can be deployed and are available in, products like Microsoft and CrowdStrike and solutions from Dell. What are those, and how can I deploy them in my environment?
It's so important and great advice, because in the heat of the battle, people are so focused, and a lot of times they're just not aware of some of the capabilities. These are freebies. You have them. Take advantage of them. We also have some resources for you. Principal Technologies is a world-class, they're independent third-party benchmarking and validation firm. And we're showing here they've conducted testing and research on this topic. They produce a comprehensive report on device security. We'll put that link into the notes for you. There's also a Dell white paper on supply chain security that we'll put in the notes as well. Guys, thanks so much. Great conversation, and thank you for the hard work that you're doing to keep us safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, and thank you everybody for watching this segment of Partnerships for Smarter Security, made possible by Dell Technologies and its ecosystem partners like Intel. Stay tuned to our program for more information on how industry partnerships are contributing to better security outcomes and how you can lower your risks.